So today we are joined by our first international guest. Joining us from Helsinki, Finland, is Pia Puolakka. Pia, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
You are a project manager at Smart Prison Project in Helsinki, correct?
Yes.
Can you give us kind of a brief explanation of what the Smart Prison Project does?
Smart Prison Project is a project by the Finnish Criminal Sanctions Agency, and we are digitalizing our client work. That's to say it briefly. The main goal is to build the first smart prison system in our new women's prison in Hämeenlinna. And that means that in this prison, there's going to be a personal cell device for every prisoner. And that's what we are implementing actually right now at the moment. The smart system will go live on 1st of March this year. And then we've developed digital services also in all our units. We've provided prisoners with joint use workstations and developed digital services for those units too. And during this year of COVID-19, this need for digital services increased also a lot in Finnish prisons too. And so there has been a digitalization project and also the need to answer to the challenges of these difficult times that we are living, these restricted times.
Right.
So that's what Smart Prison is doing.
When you say digital services, what are some of the things that are kind of included in that?
On the joint use workstations, we have restricted access to internet. So there's already several hundred different websites that prisoners can browse through. And we've tried to select those kind of websites that provide rehabilitational services, social services, education, vocational services. And then prisoners can also use Skype calls for online meetings with relatives and also officials and our NGOs and other representatives who work with us to support prisoners' social and psychological well-being. So, for example, these kind of services and then some special pilots, some special courses, and online consultation with the social insurance services in Finland, and specialties like this, and also this AI course that we provided in all our units.
So this is getting rolled out at, you said at a is it a brand new women's facility that is being opened, or it's already existing but you're just digitalizing it?
This is brand new. It opened on 1st of November last year, and so the prison is now built, and the smart system will be implemented there soon. So within 1 month, we still have some tests and auditing going on with the system, but then we will start to use it.
Will this be available to all of the inmates in there, or is it depending on why they're in the prison to begin with?
The smart system is so that every prisoner will have access to the so-called inside services. So the possibility to message to staff to, for example, reserve appointments or use basic office tools with the device if they want to do some stuff related to their studies during prison time, for example, and use the services inside prison. But then outside access is restricted. So prisoners have to apply for permission to use the restricted internet. Of course, we aim that as many as possible could get this permission. And then the video calls with relatives are also possible. We can we have surveillance for those calls, so they are secured. So most of the services are basically working for everyone.
Okay, interesting. This project you mentioned, when the digitalization piece, once COVID happened, you guys realized the need for it to definitely be implemented. But prior to that, what led to wanting to accomplish this? What was the driving factor behind let's have something like this for our inmates?
We started in 2018, and at that point we had already found out that there are systems like this used in other prisons in Europe and also in Asia, and I also think also in the States some kind of digital services for inside prison use. So it was our idea to modernize our prison system and have a kind of new prison concept to support prisoners' rehabilitation, and also to help this rehabilitation with modern tools, with digital services, because this is how the society works at the moment, and prisoners are often left behind because they lack these kind of skills. So definitely this lack of digital skills and knowledge of digital services is one risk factor for also reoffending, or at least getting marginalized in a society that already a lot functions in the digital world, and many of our clients are excluded from that development, as they are excluded in many other ways too. But this is one aspect.
Sure. The agency that you are a part of, do they oversee all of the prisons in Finland, or is it particular ones?
It's all prisons and probation offices too. So the whole criminal sanctions system is under our unit.
Okay. Is this something, this digitalization, if you can share, is this something that, I guess if successful, that something they would want to have throughout the country?
Yes, I think so, and that's our intention, that now that we have the first prison as a pilot unit, this
Right.
new Hämeenlinna women's prison, if we get good experiences, and if we still get budget for extending the model, we would really like to do that.
Is this in collaboration with the Finnish government? The funding of it and all of that?
Criminal Sanctions Agency works under the Ministry of Justice.
Okay.
So basically, with them, we share our projects and budgets. So
Understood.
it's like this. Yeah.
Understood. I was mentioning to you before we started, the way I had even learned about this was through a video that was published on YouTube. I think it was a few months ago, where it was a 7-minute video discussing the project that you're working on, and also it was highlighting. It showed a couple inmates at a male facility. One of them was there for murder, but he was able to take these courses, learn these things, and even go socialize outside of the prison. It was like a designated meeting. And they were discussing. I think they were discussing the course he was taking, and the people were getting feedback from the inmate on how he felt it went. What was helpful, what wasn't. And this was pretty eye opening to me, because I mentioned to you in our email when I reached out to you that it's not. From my knowledge, there's nothing like that here. You mentioned you think there might be some digitalization in the works in the U.S. system, which is entirely possible, and I just don't know. But the one thing I kind of wondered when I was watching this was, is this currently something that could be successful? Is it unique to certain countries, or could this be wide scale to everywhere? And I'm kind of interested to know what you think by that. I mean, so the United States, for example, is obviously much more populous. It has 330 million people at least, I think. Finland has about 5.5 million. And then the most alarming number, most not alarming, but very interesting figure was that I think it said in Finland the number of inmates is a little less than 3,000 versus in America I think they said it was half the population of Finland is the number, so which is about over 2 million people here. So do you think, in your opinion, that maybe not today or tomorrow, but at some point, what is being implemented there, if successful, could even be done on a wide scale for much more populous countries, such as the United States?
I think so. It will happen because if you look at the direction where society is going, I think all institutions will continue this digitalization process anyway. And of course, prisons are very special environments. So in Finland, we say that prison is always 10 to 20 years behind the development of the rest of the society. And when the project started, I think it was true, at least regarding this digitalization. But thanks to our project, I think we are now much closer to the systems that, for example, schools and hospitals and other institutions, comparable institutions have. So I think we will go towards this direction in every country, but of course different countries' situations are very different too. So it's very hard to compare.
Right.
You can't compare the system in the States directly to the system in Finland because,
Absolutely.
as you say, we are totally different societies in many ways too. And I believe there are also countries that are even farther away from what we have here or what you have there in the States. But everybody will follow the same line of development, but it will take more time for some countries, and some countries are already there. I wouldn't say Finland is leading in the digitalization at the moment in prison systems. As I said, there have been already systems like this in other countries before we started our project.
Certainly, I think what you just highlighted is kind of how I feel too. Like, well, the blueprint is there, but the implementation is going to be vastly different from country to country. Because when I first learned
Yes.
about this, I thought it was very admirable. Because the way I always personally interpreted the intent of prison was, depending what you've done, it's to rehabilitate. So you go in, you serve whatever your time is, and you rehabilitate so that when you're done, you can come out and then rejoin society, and add value, do something for yourself, whatever it may be. Obviously, get rid of whatever the actions, whatever the tendencies you had in the past. But then you kind of see that you throw these people in a box, they have only like an hour of time, whatever it might be, outside, or some places might have better resources than others, and there's a lot of the return rate is also something that's concerning. We're getting going back into prison. So when I saw that video, and then the one thing that I found interesting, and I don't know if this is across Finland or if this is certain prisons again, was that it wasn't even a cell; it was a dorm that the inmate was in, which I think also adds something to it, because it's a legitimate living arrangement versus a cold box. And I think for me, where the conflict is like, well, ultimately this person committed a crime. How much do we factor? What kind of living arrangements they should have? What kind of amenities should they have? And I think that's kind of the duality of this whole thing, is how much do these people deserve given what they've done? I guess depending what they've done too. There's obviously different types of acts, but then also it's like, well, they made a mistake, but they also need to be rehabilitated, so they need to have the resources. So what do you think about finding that balance? How is that? Just for yourself as a professional too, and what you do, what are your opinions on that?
Yeah, as you saw in the document, the prisoner that was interviewed was in open prison, and in the Finnish system we have different levels, different security levels, or different closeness levels in our prisons. So if you've done a serious crime, you first go to the closed prison, which is not only a cold box, but okay, it's a cell, and there are more restrictions of what you can do there. But definitely also in closed prisons, we have a lot of rehabilitation, we have work, we have education for prisoners. But the idea is that you step by step learn your path towards freedom and crime-free life. And that's why we aim that in an ideal situation, the prisoner shouldn't be released from closed units after several years of being there, but he should go step by step to more open environment. And that's why we have the open prison system, where you can already interact with the society. Of course, in a restricted way, we have our policies in open prisons too. But I think it's a good way to rehabilitate and start to learn the skills and the normal life before you are actually fully released. And we believe in our system that this is a good way to affect recidivism and avoid the high coming back rate, as you said, that prisoners learn normal life before they are released.
That makes plenty of sense, at least on the surface like that, because again, it's like, let's say someone's serving a sentence for 10 years and it's in it's a closed prison there or anywhere. It's just like it's the standard. You have your own cell, you have your limited interactions with the people there, and then whatever, maybe books might be available, but it's very limited to what you do, the resources. Let's say you do that entire 10 years, and then it's like, okay, your 10 years are done, you can leave now. You've been removed from society and how things work for 10 years. And that was 10 years ago. So in the 10 years, things have changed. New laws are in place, new technologies are in place, new cars, whatever, things have changed. Processes have changed since you've been gone. So you were mentioning, when you're in prison, you're like 10, 20 years behind. That kind of happens again here when you leave, and then you end up leaving prison and you have to like reassimilate. So what you described makes sense. Is like you take someone, depending on severity of crime, from a closed prison to an open prison, so that when it does come time for them to be released, they've at least been, they've had different exposures. It's not like they've only been in a box and then they get thrown out into the wide open. It's like, we'll figure it out now, and we'll probably see you in like a year or something like that. It sounds like it makes sense, but I wonder why certain places, maybe here included, aren't there yet. I wonder what it is that's holding other institutions back from this.
Yeah, of course there are security questions that,
of course,
that people think when they plan or organize these kind of systems. And we also analyze quite carefully the risk levels of prisoners before they start the sentence, but also during the sentence, and especially when we consider whether somebody should have the permission to go to open prison or to go on prison furloughs. So as I said, it's not automatic. We analyze and we evaluate, and the prisoner has to show that he has progressed with his rehabilitation. So of course, it's important to have the necessary evaluations before you release someone or put someone in more open environment.
Absolutely. Would you be able to share kind of what are some of the things that you do there? What are what's some of your role in this implementation of this project?
My role in this implementation project. So as a project manager, I'm responsible of coordinating the whole process. And of course, there's been a lot of service planning together with my team, what kind of services we should provide. A lot of technical questions, which we have our own specialists for those questions. I'm a psychologist myself, so I don't know all the aspects of the technical ones, but my team consists of different kind of specialists. Some are more specialists in rehabilitative practices, and some are more specialized in ICT and technical aspects. And if I'm thinking about the project, there's also been a lot of collaboration with our partners. So other institutions that provide us their services during prison time, and what kind of digital solutions they have, and how we can bring those services to prisons. And then, of course, when we were developing the smart system, we did some test uses, proof of concepts, to say it with the correct word, with some vendors' devices. And then we also had a long tender process where we were looking for the right solution for us. And then together with the chosen vendor, we've developed and tested the system and trained prisoners and staff to use it. And at the same time, of course, as I said, we've been taking care of all our units' digital services from the joint use computers. So there's been a lot of work, and now that we are close to implementing, the next step is that we analyze and evaluate the experiences that we get from there, and to further develop the system and to further, I hope, broaden the system to our other units. So as a project manager, I'm responsible for the overall coordination of these processes. But then there's a lot of team members who also take care of the concrete processes and services.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite a task what you guys are trying to achieve. And like you mentioned, there's a lot of collaboration. In whatever detail you can share, what are like some of the difficulties you guys encounter in enrolling such a big task like this?
As I said, I think the most challenges have to do with the prison as such a special environment. So bringing this kind of services to a school or a hospital is a totally different thing. You don't have to think about all the questions, for example, regarding security, as
Right.
we have to. We have to double check and recheck many things, and think from the prisoner's perspective, what can be the risks or the kind of holes in the system that they would try to misuse. And of course, nowadays also the legislation considering data protection is very a detailed issue. We have to take care of making the system to meet the requirements of GDPR. And then since this is very new to prisons, this is also a question of change management. So we have prisoners whose level of skills, also in digital skills, might not be very high. Prisoners have special problems and disabilities also that affect learning these kind of things and systems. Yet it's very important that they would have the chance to learn and develop these skills. But also our staff traditionally has been accustomed to certain kind of prison culture. And it's been also a challenge to implement the new thinking to staff, that your role is to provide prisoners these kind of skills, and your role is to enable rehabilitation, besides from being prison officers who of course take care of the security and surveillance. But nowadays part of everybody's job is also to rehabilitate actively.
Absolutely.
So a lot of things to do.
I would think so.
With the whole prison culture.
Of course, of course. One of the things you mentioned when you were describing your responsibilities was assessing the risk of one inmate versus another, in terms of, where are they going to be placed, what kind of openness, closeness. how is that assessed? Is that based on, obviously, I'm sure, the type of crime committed, but then do you guys look at similar crimes committed in the past and where are those people typically placed? Do you look at their overall history as well? Is it the first time offense? Is it a combination of different things? That's kind of interesting to understand what goes into the thought process of that.
Mm. Always when there is digital tools, and always when there is access outside, even in a restricted way, it produces a kind of risk that you have to manage.
Right.
So as you can imagine, for prisoners, any kind of contact outside might provide a way to misuse or continue crime somehow. So these kind of things has to be pre-thought very well. For example, and I think that's the main question: how do we provide secure system? Of course, it's also must be a secure system to the prisoner himself, since prisoner's position is anyway. How would I say? They are in a special position. We also have to take care of their security and privacy, and instruct them on what kind of things is good to do in the internet. Can you give your information to no matter what kind of website? How do you use the services that, for example, require you to use your personal information to make an account for some service? So a lot of questions considering the privacy and security of the people outside, but also the privacy and security of the people inside.
Right.
Since they are in a very special position anyway.
Right. I was watching another interview you had done a few months back. The person was prefacing that back a few decades ago, Finland had high incarceration rate. There was a lot of people that they were imprisoning, and then over time, now they went from one of the highest in Europe to now one of the lowest. Do you happen to know what changed? What kind of led to that? Was it certain laws were passed? A cultural shift in how prisons were viewed? Because that was very fascinating to hear about how it went from where it was a few decades ago to where it is now. Because then that could also serve as a blueprint for other places that are looking for some kind of adjustment or a change in their prison systems.
Yeah, it might be due to the general development in the Finnish society itself also, and the open prison system also that started some decades ago, and also renewing the prison concept to more rehabilitative concept. So we actually provide a lot of rehabilitation at the moment. There's substance abuse rehabilitation. There are psychologists, social workers in prisons. There are educational possibilities for prisoners, vocational possibilities. So I think we have succeeded to make the prisons not only punishment organizations, but the rehabilitation units. And I think, due to these kind of reasons, we've been able to make the incarceration rate lower.
That makes sense. You were saying earlier as well, your background is as a psychologist. When you were how do you go from there to where you are now, working? I mean, obviously, what your background, definitely, I can see how the knowledge you have translates to what you're doing now. But is this what you're currently doing something you envisioned would be where you would be, or were you thinking you would be a traditional psychologist? How did this opportunity come up? Because you've been there now a few years, correct? I think this is the second type of prison you've been a part of as well. Prison system, I should say.
Yeah, I used to work as a prison psychologist before I went to work in the central administration unit 4 years ago, actually. And it's true, I was first working as a senior specialist in rehabilitative practices.
Mhm.
And then the Smart Prison project started, and they were looking for a project manager. And they wanted to find a project manager that would maybe not be so technical, but understand the substance of digital services and see them as a way to promote rehabilitation and modernize rehabilitation. And I think that's why my background was very suitable. And of course, meanwhile, I've been learning a lot myself about the digital side, the technical side, and
Mhm.
I've done some further studies myself then in AI, for example. And we have a new AI project starting too, where I'm the project manager for that one too. So it was a chance for me to both use my educational background that I had as a forensic psychologist, but also learn something new and to kind of modernize the psychological ways of affecting prisoners.
Mm.
With digital tools, you can do a lot. It's just you have to think that mm, digital side is the tool, and the substance comes from us, from humans. we
Right.
have to we have to design the services and the content of the services. The technical side is then the technical side, but in itself it doesn't bring that much if you haven't decided the content actually in a
Right.
right way, in a human-centered way. Mm.
The program you guys are working on implementing, in your experience talking with different people outside of work, how is that program viewed in Finland? Is this something that it seems to you that most people are proponent of, or do some people seem to have their hesitations and don't like the idea of prisoners having this access to this new digitalization and having open access? What's the general temperature of on this matter in Finland?
I think most people have very positive have given us very positive feedback. I think the time was right
Mm.
when we started the project. Maybe 10 years ago it wouldn't have succeeded yet, but now the time is right. The level of digitalization is enough high in the society to allow it to go through all the systems. Of course, there are also those ones that are worried. And these people are usually the ones that are very security oriented. And
Mm.
I definitely understand that. As a prison worker, the security is the first question anyway you think about when thinking what is possible inside prison. So this is kind of an automatic mindset that comes, that you first see the risks as a prison worker.
Mm.
And that is, I guess that is how it's supposed to be, and it's reasonable. But I also want to convince people that things can be done in a secure way. So we don't have to cut down everything to make the risk zero. The risk is never zero. If you try to get the risk level to zero, it's impossible.
Right.
None of us in the normal world, our risk level for crime is not zero either.
Sure. Sure.
So to try to make it a total zero is impossible. In that case, probably we should lock down everybody, like during this COVID crisis. We've seen that every one of us has tasted a
Mm.
little bit kind of prison-like circumstances in
Sure.
their own homes,
Right.
and we can see what the effect has been on mental health and many other uh, areas of life. It's been we've paid a high price
That's a very good
for
point.
that. Mm.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. Uh, your given your background, obviously not just the environment you're working in and not just your job, but given your background as a psychologist and how you probably just view human beings in general, whether it be myself, an inmate, a relative, whatever. Do you think that gives you well, not do you think, I'm sure the answer is yes, but what kind of perspective change does that give you when you're interacting with these people, when it comes to you as a professional are now implementing something that's ultimately could really better the lives of
Mm.
the inmates currently, and also give them a, a blueprint of how to succeed once they leave? What do you think it is about your own self that maybe gives you a different a perspective when you're having these engagements with these people, when you're because you're one of the people that's in the driver's seat of driving change in these inmates' lives? What qualities do you think it is that you have that maybe I might not have either? Because for me, I feel like the part I won't get around is like, but this person really did a pretty cruel thing at some point. Whereas you obviously will think that, but then you're still able to get past it and still think, okay, well, how can I still rehabilitate them?
Mm. Yeah, you have to see the larger picture, or understand the reasons behind even the most cruel things. So I kind of think that, of course, the challenges might be enormous in prisons. I've seen people with very serious problems, and I've still seen that. Okay, nobody is 100% sick or 100% bad. All of us, we have different sides and different possibilities, and also people's motivation to change is not a static feature in us. It can change. So that's why I think that affecting even a little can have an impact,
Sure.
a meaningful impact. And if you take the easy way in prison system, of course you would. If you take the easy way, you kind of think, okay, I can't really do anything, and it's better I don't do anything. I don't try anything with the prisoners. So that's the easy way.
Mm-hmm.
But if you want to have an impact, you have to believe that it's possible to have effect on people, and see the reasons behind even most odd behavior. If you think about, for example, that in many life stories of criminals I've seen, there's very traumatic backgrounds. There's very heavy substance abuse problems from early on. There's a lot of experiences in life that kind of make it understandable that why this person has ended up in this point where he is right now in prison. So you have to see the whole story and understand that one thing leads to another, and believe that personality maybe cannot be changed totally, but at least people's behavior can change, and maybe people's attitude can change, and maybe people can get at least more control of those things in themselves that might be risk factors. And kind of to give prisoners self-understanding also. And these kind of things I'm thinking when I'm trying to rehabilitate someone.
And I think what you highlighted is critical, and when approaching something like that, because again, these are people that have generally, it didn't just happen out of the blue. Whatever act they committed, like you mentioned, there might have been history of substance abuse or some kind of other trauma. So I think you having the ability to, one, diagnose it, and also be, empathetic of how did this person end up to where they are. It wasn't just overnight they woke up and decided, I'm going to go commit whatever this crime is. It's years possibly of torment, trauma, mental illness, whatever it might be that's led them there. So, now that you have them in a facility, and people like you are there to, again, rehabilitate, to make sure that they are ultimately better, and if given their terms dictate, they can re-enter society, that when they do, when that time does come, that they're as ready as can be. And not, I don't know, just again, I'm not someone that's overly not knowledgeable at all on the topic, but it seems like that whole idea of rehabilitation has left the goal of, at least it seems here in America. And again, it's very anecdotal. I'm not based. I don't have any metrics. I don't know, but it just seems like that.
Mhm. Yeah.
So I guess the last thing I want to end on is, so you highlighted how you've kind of maneuvered in the different roles you've had at the prisons. But before you got there, how'd you even get there? How was your first role there? How did you end up there? Because I think when I was listening to another conversation you had with someone, you were mentioning there was a professor or someone was asking for some kind of assistant. They needed help with something, and you volunteered. Is that how it was?
Yeah, it was kind of a path. When I was still in high school, I interested in psychology.
Hmm.
There was the chance to study psychology in Finnish high schools, and then I applied to study psychology in university. And when we had the first course on forensic psychology, uh, uh, the that was a revealing moment to me. I understood that this is something I want to do. And yes, there was a professor who was then asking for an research assistant for a criminal profiling
Hmm.
project. And I did my thesis in that project. And so it started. And then I ended up as a prison psychologist. I studied more to become a psychotherapist for clinical work, and then did my further studies in forensic psychology for 2 years.
Hmm.
And then at some point, I thought that if I want to influence things on a larger level, I don't want to stay only in one prison as a one prison psychologist for certain people, but I want to have effect on the system more widely.
Sure.
So then I ended up for the senior specialist position to plan and coordinate the rehabilitative practices that we have in the prison system. So that was the path.
Do you see yourself? You mentioned you didn't want to just stay in one role at the prison system, but you wanted to have
Mm.
kind of a more expanded opportunity. At this point where you are, can you even see yourself doing anything beyond the prison system, or is there at this point the taste that you've gotten, especially the implementation of this project you guys are doing now? Is it for you more like, I just want to see how much impact myself and my team can make, specifically in prisons?
At the moment, I think that I want to look how far I can go with this, and especially that if I myself can say that I've had positive impact on a larger scale
Hmm.
to people's life, to those people's lives that are the most marginalized or most stigmatized also in the society. I think that's an important task, and I think criminal sanctions agencies in all countries are actually doing a very important job
Mm.
on a whole society level,
Right.
although it's a very special field and quite narrow field if you think about the percentage of population that ends up in the system.
Sure.
But anyway, it's a very critical part of our whole system, of whole society, and it tells a lot about the society, what kind of prisons they have.
Certainly. Yeah. Absolutely. I think that's where that main thing you were mentioning about the cultural, um like where a country is culturally at the time. So you mentioned at the time when this started in 2018, Finland was ready for it, whereas maybe 10 years prior they would not have been ready.
Mm.
So, different countries across the world, that's, they might yet be at that point where it's like it's still at that 10 years ago phase where Finland wasn't ready yet. So a lot of places there might
Mm.
not be ready yet, but like you said, you think it'll get there eventually. And I would hope so, because again, even if someone commits whatever the crime is, the purpose of them going is to rehabilitate. Part of what their
Yes.
purpose is, I should say. So I think if ultimately, more places can see the results that you guys are starting to see, and hopefully the results you guys are seeing continue in the direction and continue to improve with all the things you're implementing, and more countries can at least use the blueprint. Of course, the implementation is going to vary by the size of the country, but as long as a viable blueprint can be shown, hopefully the future will be more positive, and the outcome will be more optimistic for a lot of these inmates and ultimately society, not just them.
Yes, I hope so. We will go to that direction in all societies, in all countries.
Certainly. Well, Pia, thank you very much for taking the time today to discuss all this. It was very informative. Like I said, I barely knew anything about it going in, so I was like, I'm just gonna wait. I'll speak with her and see what she can inform me of, and as well as the viewers. So thank you for taking the time. I appreciate it, and I know it's late by you,
Thank
so
you.
have a good evening. Appreciate it.
You too, and
You
we'll be
got it.
back.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You got it. Thanks.
Yes, bye.
Bye.